The Verdict with World Pool.
Hi everybody, welcome to this week's edition of The Verdict. It's been an interesting week as far as the racing TV courses have been concerned, and we are going to major on Brigadier Gerard night at Sandown. I'll bring you a couple of races from there. Really was, as ever, a very good night's racing. We'll also be at Haydock for a couple of races on Saturday. We'll go to York for one, but we will start midweek, Wednesday night at Kempton Park. Well, it was a very interesting contest that I'm going to look at, the 652 over 7 furlongs. Cafes, the winner. One of 3 times that dipped under standard. Tremolo went under as well, as did Haku, over 1.5 miles. That was a good performance to go under standard over that trip. They often crawl and sprint over that trip at Kempton, not on that occasion in that 8.22. But it's Cafes who I want to focus on in that 652. Race IQ time indexes ranked 0 to 10 based on the class of the race and the surface that they're racing on and the trip over which they are racing. And the source Cafes has come out really well. The best time of the night, 9.5 on the Race IQ time index, 7.3 was the average. I think really you could describe the surface as standard, not standard to slow. Let's get them from the stalls then. Cafes came from stall 2, Spy Chief from 6, Uniting came from stall 3. This was a tale of just the first 2. They pulled 6.5 lengths clear of the rest. And it was a very interesting race as far as pace was concerned. And that pace was furious early on, courtesy of this horse, Spy Chief. Very keen in the early part of the race. He was a bit tardy out of the gates, but he was sued in front. And he was flying along in the early part of the race. He went 12.10, his second furlong, when he was pulling hard, 10.77. He's winging along, and he then did an 11.15 and 11.2. Rab Havlin just let him roll along on what is his second career start, and he pulls further and further clear as they get into the home straight. But he pays for all of this effort in the closing stages and gets very tired inside the final furlong and is run down by Cafes, who's rated evenly in behind. Look at the winner's finishing speed percentage. He's in 4th there, just angling out, 100.4. The par is 103.67. So they normally, in a race of this standard over this trip of 7 furlongs, finish a little bit quicker than they did here. But the leader is stopping, and Cafes, through the 6th furlong, 11.66 to go, and chased down this tiring leader, and a 12.28 was good enough in the final furlong to just get up and win. That's rated as slow as against the Race IQ par, but the runner-up was going very slow with a 12.94 and is just nailed right on the line. The winner showed loads of speed. He's going to have to settle down and relax, but there's some potential, I think, as far as he's concerned, and he's run on really well in the closing stages. Look at the rest of them. They were toiling a long way out. They couldn't go with that early gallop. The runner-up is rated to Al Sahel, the very useful Al Sahel, who was a really good winner in Dubai a couple of seasons ago, a fast horse over 7 furlongs. If they can harness his early keenness and energy, he's going to be a horse to conjure with going forward, I think. Spy Chief, I'd like to see him perhaps at 6 furlongs because he looks very quick. But he's pulled a mile clear of the rest, and he's just run down by a stronger stayer in the end. Cafes was just having his second career start, and he just got there in the nick of time for the Roger Varian team. I think both of these are useful 3-year-olds, lightly raced, and loads more to come. And I'd be very keen to keep an eye on Spy Chief. Look at those early sectionals from him. The second horse. Look at the light green colours, very fast as against par, as against what you would expect in those furlongs 1, 2, 3 and 4. He's just gone too fast, and then he's very slow in the last 2, 12.26 and 12.94, and that allowed Cafes to run him down. The important furlong for Cafes, 11.66, much quicker than Spy Chief as that horse ran out of petrol. 2 nice horses to keep an eye on going forward. OK, let's go to Sandown on Thursday night. Always a good night, the Brigadier Gerard evening. Here are the winners. And Wicked took the opening contest in good style. And Thiele, a big price winner in the National Stakes for the Millman team. Well done to them. Trawlerman made all. Pretty comfortable success in the 7:05, and he'll head to Royal Ascot for the Gold Cup. Now, Almaqam, best time of the night by some way, only horse to go under standard. We'll look at him in a minute, and we'll also look at Opera Ballo as well, back on track after failing in the 2,000 guineas. And Afita Lane took the last. We start, though, with Almaqam. This is the time index that he achieved. Best of the night, over 1.25 miles, 7.9. And Opera Ballo, who we'll also look at, 6.6. Much better than the meeting average, which was 5.2. That brought down a little bit by that very slow time for the National Stakes, just a time index of 2. But we will look at the Star Sports Brigadier Gerard Stakes first of all. Almaqam, who under a change of tactics lands this in really gritty fashion. And this is one of the best times of the season. Not the day, not the week, the season from Almaqam, because he was rated beautifully in front by Oisin Murphy from stall 1. Ombudsman was second. He came from stall 4, and Phantom Flight was third from stall number 3. All of them prominent in the early part of this contest. And Almaqam, who normally is given a chance in his races, is normally dropped out and got to get a bit of cover. But this time they didn't. They wanted him to go forward, and he wasn't that quick out of the stalls. 2.53 seconds to get to 20 miles an hour made him the 5th quickest, but Oisin Murphy was quite vigorous on him from there on, got him to the front fairly quickly. And there on he's just got an even gallop out in front. Even gallops always give you the best final times. You don't get a good final time if you go fast and then slow, or slow and then fast. But if you just go even, I'll give you some of his fractions early on that he went. He went 11.98, 11.63, and then he settled down after those first 2 furlongs into a nice even rhythm. 12.11, 12.26, 12.58, all pretty similar, and 12.77. And what he did in the closing stages is really dig deep off those even fractions. He clearly stays 10 furlongs really strongly. Ombudsman comes with a big challenge inside the final quarter mile, but he just cannot get past Almaqam, who finds plenty. And you can tell that he's rated evenly by that finishing speed percentage there. Look at that, 100.68. Oisin Murphy's got it absolutely spot on. This horse just basically carving out even 12-second furlongs. 101.32 is the par. So they normally finish just a little bit quicker up the hill than Oisin's Almaqam did on this occasion. It's just winding him up from the front now as Ombudsman begins to throw down a challenge. Ombudsman was quicker than the winner through the 3rd last furlong, quicker than the winner in the 2nd last furlong to make up the ground and to get to Almaqam. 12.06 Ombudsman, 12.15 Almaqam through the penultimate furlong. That got into the girth of Almaqam, but he couldn't go on thereafter. And Almaqam found more, and he was quicker in the final furlong, telling us that he's dug deep and he's just saw this trip out a little bit better than Ombudsman, who used up his energy to come from further back to catch the well-ridden front-runner, Almaqam. Ombudsman was previously unbeaten coming into this, and he's lost very little in defeat here. This is a tremendous time for this race. The overall time was 2 minutes 6.03, 1.83 seconds under the race IQ par. That just tells you how well the winner was rated and how well Ombudsman's run in 2nd place. Phantom Flight keeping on to cling on for 3rd spot in the end. Final furlongs, the final 3 furlongs, 37.74 for the winner and 37.62 quicker for Ombudsman. That's because he ran the 3rd last and 2nd last furlongs quickly to get to Almaqam, and then he got a little bit tired. So he lost nothing in defeat at all, Ombudsman, but Almaqam really good, and he can take a step forward now, you'd have thought, from this, now that perhaps making the running is the way to go with him. His top speed, 39.18 miles an hour. There's just one other horse who got to 39 miles an hour, that's Emsjar, who got 39.09, 11.63. Fastest furlong in the race was the 2nd furlong for every single horse. They went quite hard in the early part of the race to establish a position, and thereafter that man dictated even fractions, and this horse dug deep when challenged by Ombudsman. A tremendous renewal, I think, of this Brigadier Gerard Stakes, and a winner for Ed Walker, who's in tremendous form. Well, Almaqam, who won the Brigadier Gerard, won the Heron Stakes last year. This time around, it went to Opera Ballo for Godolphin and William Buick, who's riding out of his skin at the moment. Opera Ballo came from stall 7, Bay City Roller from 4, and Jackknife. Keep an eye on his run through the race. He's a horse of immense potential. That's the 2nd time he's been on the verdict. He was on the verdict when he won at Epsom on his debut, and he's pitched in pretty deep just for his second start. He was really eye-catching in the closing stages. Winner was quickly out of the stalls first, in fact, 2.29 seconds to get to 20 miles an hour. Look how keen he is on the outside of the field, Opera Ballo. He'd been so impressive when he'd won at Kempton on the all-weather in the autumn, and then he disappointed at Newmarket when we saw him on the turf for the first time, where he pulled too hard. And he's pulled hard here, but William's done a good job. He decided not to let him roll along and just get him in behind. Just take a pull and get him in and get a bit of cover. That was probably the winning move from William Buick, because Opera Ballo was able to save just enough to win this race, despite using up loads of petrol in the early part of the contest by being way too keen and zestful. Now he's in a pretty good rhythm in a race that was run at a reasonable gallop. Look at the finishing speed percentage, 101.29. And the par, well, he's almost bang on it. 101.1 is what you would expect. So he's 1.29% quicker in the final two furlongs than the rest of the race. He picks up here. He's on the bridle now under William. The rest of them are pushing away. It's just a question of what he'll find, having been keen. And he finds enough. A 12.23 penultimate furlong is enough to push past Bay City Roller and indeed get away from Jackknife, who's stuck in behind horses and now angle outside to the outside of the field. He'll run on quite well. And a 13.05 final furlong was the fastest in the race, even though it looks like Jackknife is finishing strongly down the outside. He wasn't finishing as quickly as Opera Ballo. And the reason I wanted to have a look at Opera Ballo is that he's got to be very talented, this horse, if he's able to pull as hard as he did, yet still finish off the race quite evenly in the end. 25.29 his last couple of furlongs, 25.64 the runner-up, 25.66 the third. He must be a very talented racehorse to pull like he does, yet still be able to find enough to win this decent race. Jackknife, right hand side of your screen, definitely a horse to keep an eye on. Not sure where they'll go with him. They might go to Royal Ascot, but he was a very good winner who produced some really interesting data when he won at Epsom, and he featured in the verdict after that success on his debut. And he might have gone close to winning here if he'd got out a little bit earlier. But there's Opera Ballo. He's a really talented racehorse. If only he would just settle down a little bit and relax a bit, there could be an awful lot more to come from him. Big, long, striding individual, isn't he? There is the sectional data. This is all the sectionals as against par, colour-coded for you, very slow blue and slow, the darker blue, all the way through to very fast. You can see the mid part of the race was quick, 11.96 and 12.58 from Opera Ballo, rated as fast and very fast. It was a par finish from Opera Ballo, and all of the other horses put in a sub-par furlong through those last two furlongs. So he's just been able to keep galloping. He's just been able to keep going with that 12.23 and 13.05, faster than anything else in the race through those final two furlongs. There he is coming back in. I don't know whether he's going to allow himself to ever become a Group 1 horse. He's probably got the talent to be one. He's just going to have to settle down a little bit. Nonetheless, he has the Heron Stakes in his bag. OK, let's move on to last weekend, and we're going to have a look at a couple of races from Haydock Park. They staged a really good card, and there are all of the winners stress-free in a good time, taking the opening contest. Horse has been hard to win with. Cody Lyon is progressing well as a sprinter. Balmoral Lady got the gaps when she needed them under Paul Mulrennan for Ed Walker, who's having a tremendous time of it at the moment. Estrange, we're going to have a look at her performance in the 2.58 and the 3.33.10 Bob Tony as well. So let's have a look at the Race IQ time index. We've got the two reasonable times. The best times came at the beginning of the card. Stress-free, the best time overall. But we're going to have a look at Estrange, who was wildly impressive in the fourth contest with a time index of 5.8. 10 Bob Tony, 5.3. So they're both just above the average for the meeting. So good times overall, really. Here is Estrange. This is a very good filly. And if I tell you right at the beginning that the Arc de Triomphe was mentioned in dispatches after this, that's how highly thought of she is. She came from 3, she beat Shahar from 6, Chorus from stall 1. And she was just dropped out in the early part of this race, just given a little bit of a chance. She was out quickly, look, 2.35 seconds to 20 miles an hour, the fastest in the race. But Danny Turner wanted to give her a little bit of a chance. And it wasn't furious early on the gallop, even though he's dropped her out. They've not gone particularly fast. Beautiful Love, a little bit keen, number 2, the Godolphin horse. Not too bad, though. They went early fractions that were 12.02, 12.63, 12.54. Our Golden One taking them along in the early part of the race. And then a 12.74. So it was a race where the first 4 furlongs were quite steady, really. They were all jostling for position, trying to get their horses settled and relaxed. And they were pretty steady for those first 4. And then the next 3, they just increased the pace a little bit. And they did a very fast 7th furlong, rated as very fast against par for every single horse in the race. So steady, then it quickened up, and then they came home evenly thereafter. But Estrange caught the eye with the way she travelled and the way she powered home. 106.33 her finishing speed percentage, so she's 6.33% faster in the final 3 furlongs than the rest of the race, and she did it without really being hard pressed or given a hard time. That's quicker than the par FSP that you would expect. At this stage, she's got a bit to do. What is she, 6-7 lengths off the pace, but she makes up her ground effortlessly. She's in 8th with a 12.33 9th furlong. Then she goes 11.79 from this point. She goes 11.79, 11.71, and that takes her right into contention. She suddenly goes through the gears. I'll give you her closing sectionals. 12.79, 12.33, then 11.79 as she picks up, then 11.71 as she sustains her speed, and then she slows down in the final furlong with a 12.5. That's still rated as fast against par. Look at this now. Absolutely motionless. Nice fillies to Danny Tudhope's left, including Chorus, who's hit the front now for William Haggis, but cannot go on. The same applies to Sahar, who Estrange has just swept past, and now it's just a question of keeping her going. I've highlighted her 12th furlong of 12.5 because she was the only filly in the race to go under 13 seconds. Nothing else could do so at the end of this, and I reckon she could have gone quicker if you look at Danny Tudhope's demeanour in the closing stages. The one thing about this filly to note is that she's bombed out on firm ground. She just wants good ground, no firmer really. She does act in heavy ground, so any cut this autumn would really suit her. I think that's why people were talking about the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe for her. That's obviously a big step up in class, but she did this so effortlessly that you've got to think that they'll have a go at a Grade 1 at some point. Lovely performance from her. And to boot, she's lightly raced as well. She hasn't had many starts, just that one poor effort on firm ground earlier on in her career, but when she's encountered softish ground, she's been very good indeed, and she was brilliant here on her seasonal reappearance, and there's an awful lot more to come from her. The sectionals were quite impressive. It's just the way she showed that sustained speed, going from a mid-12 second furlong to mid-11 and another mid-11, and then she was faster than everything comfortably in the final furlong to win by 4 1/4 lengths. And there's her fastest furlong of 11.71. Sahar managed at 11.84, but none of the others could get under 12 seconds. And she hit the top speed in the race as well, 38.58. Whichever way you slice this Leicester Piggott Filly Stakes, she was much the best. OK, from that Leicester Piggott Stakes and the very impressive success of Estrange, let's go to the John of Gaunt at Haydock on Saturday. It was a Group 3 contest. And, well, it fell to the Ed Walker team. They had a tremendous Saturday with 3 high-profile winners. And they won this with 10 Bob Tony from stall 2, beating Kinross from 9, Volterra from 11, Room Service from 8 was back in 4th spot. 10 Bob Tony has been gelded since we last saw him. Was out of the stalls pretty quickly. He's there with a big white face, orange sleeves, orange cap, 2.4 seconds to get to 20 miles an hour and second fastest. And the second furlong was really quick, 11.21. They went hard in the early part of this race. And that's what this race was about, really. A race of 2 halves. Went very strong for the first 4 furlongs, and they got tired. They were slowing down in the closing stages, but 10 Bob Tony was able to hang on from Kinross, who's much further back, Kinross, and he's carrying a £5 penalty as well, and he narrowly fails to get up. And I think this was just simply a case of 10 Bob Tony being better positioned with a big white face than Kinross, who's 3 or 4 lengths behind him at this stage as they turn into the home straight. Look at the FSP, 98.07. Slowish finish, really. The par's 103.29. So 10 Bob Tony's won despite slowing down, but didn't slow down enough for Kinross to get to him. Kinross faster in the third last furlong with 11.49, faster in the second last furlong, 11.88, and faster in the last furlong with 12.9. Too much to do, too much running to do. And to be fair to Ten Bob Tony, he really has knuckled down, put his head down and battled. Kinross has used up a lot of energy and a lot of his speed just to get there from the rear of the field, and he can't go on thereafter, and he battles on really well. It's a bit like Ombudsman chasing the winner of the Brigadier Gerard. Just used up that energy to get there and then couldn't go on with it thereafter, and that's what Kinross did. But there's another big 7 furlong race in Kinross this season, surely. But Ten Bob Tony, what a tough effort in a fiercely run contest early on. He's tired. His final 2 furlongs rated as very slow against the Race IQ par, but he's clinging on and he's battling with his head down. It was a really game effort. Volterra ran pretty well, kicked for home quite a long way out, Volterra, off that strong gallop, and perhaps paid for that in the closing stages. But Kinross was a little bit unlucky here. He's better with a bit more cut in the ground as well. He just had a bit too much to do. But that's no one's fault, because that's how he's ridden. That's how he has to be ridden. Ridden to come home strongly, and he did that, but he had to use up just a bit too much energy to get there and to get to Ten Bob Tony. You can see how quick those early sectionals were. Look at second furlong, really fast for a lot of the horses. Look at Spycatcher going 11.16, that's quick. Ten Bob Tony had to go 11.21. So they really went hard in the early part of this contest, and then they've got tired, and 13.06 was okay from Ten Bob Tony, but he was clinging on fumes a little bit with 2 horses dipping under 13 seconds, which he didn't manage to do. But William Buick in the right place. We say that very often these days, don't we? But he was in the right place, just behind that strong gallop, struck for home when Kinross was still trying to make up ground, and that won him the race. But don't give up on Kinross. York Stage, a very competitive card on Saturday. Let's have a look at all of the winners from it. Decent times as well. They were quick times overall. Ingleby Archie, a nice winner of the sprint, the opener, did it really well for the Adrian Nichols team. Tad Edge battled on bravely to win despite hanging left. Habuba, Scenic, Frankie's Dream, Dante's Lad and Mum's Tipple, all winning in good times, going under the Racing Post standard, Habuba and Mum's Tipple. But it's Scenic, of course, I want to concentrate on. We've got a time index in race number 4 of 7.1, not a particularly flash time. There were some very good times on the card on quick ground, the average being 8.4. Let's see how Scenic won and why that time is not as good as some of the others. It makes for interesting analysis, I think. Scenic from 5, Term of Endearment was second from 6, Swayno was third from stall number 7. So this was a fillies and mares Group 3. It was overall just shy of 1.75 miles. Scenic very slowly into stride. She's normally held up, and she was 7th fastest to 20 miles an hour, 2.92 seconds. Safi Osborne deciding to drop her out and take her medicine, really, as far as the pace of the race was concerned. And things did not really go to plan for her, because the gallop is sedentary in the early part of it, and she probably wanted to be a bit closer. But in a race that's steadily run, as I often say, it's not necessarily about position, it's about who can sprint best. And Scenic was able to do so in the closing stages, but she's done so from a very poor position. Let me give you some of these early fractions, because they were really slow. It's a very steady pace. 12.98, 12.88, 12.82, 12.96 to this point, set by Tom Marquand and Term of Endearment, getting an easy lead. And then, after the first 4 furlongs, the pace just begins to steadily increase, whereby when they get to the 6th furlong, they are dipping under 13 seconds, but only just 12.61 and a 12.91. So this was going to always be about who could sprint best, and it was Scenic who could. And some of her numbers in the closing stages are very impressive indeed. 34.48. The final 3 furlongs. Next best in the race was 35.07, so she was much quicker than her nearest pursuer, which is the leader in terms of endearment at this stage. And she was able to do that with a blinding turn of foot that gave her a finishing speed percentage of 110.79, so just under 11% quicker in the final 3 furlongs than the rest of the race. That is a function of them going steady and her saving energy for a fast finish. They begin to wind it up now. Almaqam is in pole position in front, but will he be able to sprint as fast as Scenic? And the answer is no, although his filly does quicken up really well. And now the sprint is on. They really begin to move now. Safi Osborne angling to the outside on Scenic, who'll come home in the following splits, and they're really impressive. 11.16, then she goes 11.04. She's just about to do that now as she tries to get into contention. Then 11.31, and then a 12.13 to finish the race off. At 12 furlong, really quick, 11.04, as she sprints from the back of the field to get to this front runner who's had an easy time of it, term of endearment. Swano back in third, just done for toe, done for speed. And here comes Scenic, running on strongly. Her final furlong of 12.13, the runner-up 12.3. So Scenic has shown sustained speed from the back of the field. She had to use up a lot of speed to just get to the runner-up who got an easy lead. And then she was able to just get by in the closing stages. So unlike Ombudsman, who we saw in the Heron Stakes at Sandown, this filly was able to make up the ground and go past. Kinross couldn't do that. Ombudsman couldn't either. She could, though. She was able to go quick enough to get to the horse who had an easy lead, and then she had enough to just get past in the closing stages. A really fast finish, 110.79 finishing speed percentage. And because of the way the race was run, i.e. very steady for 5 furlongs, and then a sprint, you didn't get overall a very good time. Number in brackets is the position in the race that Scenic adopted. So in rear in 7th spot in that first column. Look at those slow fractions that she was running. 13.15, 13.1, etc. 13.37 for the 8th furlong. And then she makes her move and she's suddenly 13.19 in the second column, 12.11, and then the sprint is on. Goes from 6th to 5th with 11.16, then an 11.04, which thrusts her into 2nd spot, and then she's able to get to the front and hang on with a 12.13 final furlong. A blinding turn of foot for Scenic in a race that really didn't pan out how she'd want it. She really could do with a much stronger gallop than the one she got here, but she won anyway. Oh, that concludes this week's edition of The Verdict. Be sure to join me next week when we'll be looking back at the Oaks and the Derby, of course, and lots of other top-class action from Epsom as well. I hope you enjoyed this week's version. We've got a couple of horses I think that you should follow. Spy Chief, who was second in that novice event that I looked at Kempton Park, and Jackknife, who ran an absolute blinder at Sandown on Thursday night on his second career start. He's very much worth following. That's it for this week, though. I'll see you next time.
The Verdict with World Pool.